This past weekend, I had Terence and Mike over, and we were just talking about video games pretty much the entire time that they were here. We were testing out some new microphone and camera setup, and while we were doing that, we ended up having a really big conversation about the future of Nintendo. And it was so cool, I just kind of had to share it with you guys. Now, a lot of the stuff we say is a little bit controversial and stuff like that. Here it is, uncut. Hope you guys enjoy it. I know you guys know a lot about video games. We all have completely different opinions about this, and I thought I'd make a really good topic of conversation. Okay, so I am going to buy the next Nintendo console. Mm-hmm. No matter what the NX happens to be, I'm going to go out and buy it.
I'll be right behind you in line.
Right. But I know that you're out of the game.
Oh, fuck Nintendo.
So you're finished. Now,
I've been finished for a while.
So basically, I gotta ask you, like, so Mike, first off, why do you actually want to go with the next Nintendo console?
Here's the deal that I always have about Nintendo, and no matter how awful or good any of their consoles are, one thing you can always guarantee with Nintendo is top quality first party software. I don't care how good Microsoft stuff is, how good Sony how good Sony stuff is, and believe me, they have some fucking great stuff. Nothing can compare to the quality of consistent quality of first party Nintendo.
There's nothing like it. Yeah.
And now I know Nintendo is now doing, trying some smartphone stuff and all that, but the basics.
Pokemon Go.
Exactly. But they are still very locked in their traditional ways, which may change, as I'm sure we'll discuss.
We'll see.
But right now, the Zeldas, the Metroids, the Star Foxes, etc., are going to be dedicated to their own hardware. And since I love pretty much every genre of every game, and I have a plethora of games I love, I cannot be without those, no matter what.
See, I'm the same way. I feel like I've grown up with Nintendo. We all grew up with Nintendo, okay? But I started as a Sega kid. Now, I had the NES.
Yeah.
But the Sega Genesis was my jam. That console, I played all the time. And I never got the Super Nintendo. I always went over to my friend's house. You know how I felt was I had the Sega Genesis, so I had the games I wanted to play, and if I ever wanted to play the Super Nintendo house, I went to any other fucking kid's house, because they always owned the Super Nintendo. So I was always able to play everything. I felt like I owned a Super Nintendo when I never actually did for the longest time. But I agree with you. The Wii U, I still consider the Wii U to have one of the best libraries of first-party games you can find on a system. It's insane.
They really do. It's crazy. Like, obviously, third-party is probably their worst outside of the Virtual Boy, but their first-party is technically probably the best.
Yeah,
I mean, it's the Super Nintendo.
Honestly, when you compare the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4, I really believe that the Wii U has the best first-party experience, but the console was just not the right design to go with, and I think we all pretty much agree on that now. Yeah. Now that we can see it, a couple of years out.
I like to say that I called out the failure of the Wii U prior to launch, and that is on video. That's documented. I called it for what it was.
The thing was, I was so sure that what they were designing was gonna be something so much more than what it was. But when it finally came out, I think it was a couple of months after using the system, I made a video, which you guys at home can go watch, and it was. I'll put it right there. Okay, so that video is literally me talking about the worst controller this generation. I think the console's fine, but the controller sets itself apart, making it very difficult for third-party developers to get into, making it very difficult for people to play because it's got this one-on-one problem where when you're playing a video game and you're looking at the TV, the moment you look away from your controller or look away from the TV and you have to look at the controller to look at something, it just totally pulls you out of the experience. Yeah. And Shigeru Miyamoto himself, in a recent interview with, I think it was Famitsu or something like that, he basically stated, that was a problem with the controller, and I think it's a problem that we can't fix. And that's bad.
And I will say, if you want underlying ultimate proof, and coming from a giant fan of Star Fox, my God, Star Fox Zero, what there's a shining example of how awful the controller can be when it pulling you out of experience and forcing you to use it, and it just eliminates. It's like when you're playing Star Fox Zero, you want to play it as a regular Star Fox game. Then you realize you can't aim because they want you to look at the controller. But then you look at the controller, you can't see what's around you, and you got to aim like this. And it's a bad sign when you're playing a game and your main button, other than the fire button, is your calibrate button. You have to hit that as many times as your fire button. That's just terrible design.
Yeah. What needs to be said about Nintendo is this: Nintendo is an innovator. Nintendo has historically had the best first-party releases. Period. Like this generation. It's not for a lack of trying. The other systems, because the problem is with this current gen is no one thought it was going to succeed, so no one really put the initial effort into making great software. So of course Nintendo's going to do what Nintendo does, and they're going to recycle Mario, they're going to recycle Zelda, which has taken a long time to get to, but they recycle these tired franchises, which is fine. This is their bread and butter, and clearly people enjoy that. Now, going back to the issue of the controller is. It's gimmicky, and it's gimmicky to a point that it takes away from the experience of playing a game. Because when you're playing a game and you want to enjoy a game and you want to be immersed in the game or whatever you want from the game, this whole tech thing going, oh, I got a really bulky tablet with dual analog sticks and a bunch of buttons. This is great. No, I don't care about what I'm using. I'm caring about what I'm experiencing. And the controller's always been a vessel. Video games are getting very huge. The reason video games got very huge is the mobile market. We all can agree on that, because that it meant so many more people familiar with video games, and then they took the next step and they got a console. But you know what? Buttons and a controller. The controller is still the biggest hurdle between I know video games now, because of phones, are the biggest entertainment form.
Yeah.
But this still detracts from many people playing it. So you want to make this as user-friendly as possible. And saying what you're saying is like, oh, I got to aim. Oh, I don't know what's going on. Not everybody can process that information.
The moment you have to touch the screen, you have to look down at the screen, and you can't just use your thumb to tap. Because remember, that screen is so big, you can't actually get your fingers all the way into everything.
Exactly.
You see a controller. Like I said in the video that I made, that what I basically want to talk about was the controller needs to feel one-on-one. Like, we've got the PlayStation 4 controller up there, the Xbox One Elite. Heck, any controller I pull from the back here, they're all controllers that feature one-on-one connection, right? So yeah, this is this right here. This was the best controller that Nintendo made in recent years. It's insane how good this is. Now look, guys, if you haven't seen this one, this is the Wii U Pro Controller. That's what they call it, right?
Yeah.
So the Wii U Pro Controller is amazing for many, many reasons. But one of the biggest ones, 90-hour battery life.
The battery life is insane.
Beautiful
It really is
handle.
crazy.
Beautiful handle. Beautiful feel. It's got this
Super
lush...
comfortable. It's a perfect weight.
I mean, this is the controller that should have been bundled,
packed in.
right? If this was with the Wii U, I think the Wii U would have been sold at a far cheaper price, because they wouldn't have had to deal with all those, broadcasting technologies and all that stuff that's built into the Wii U to get the damn screen to turn on, all that. If they just reduced all that tech, if they just bundled it with this, made something simple and fun, man, we would have seen something cool. And, I'm excited to see what Nintendo does next, because they might do something really cool with the NX that mimics this kind of ideology of making a simple, fun-to-play console. The reason I think we are both on the same page on that, but why don't you want to get the next system? This I'm curious about.
Okay, so this is because you speak with your wallet. Okay, I bought the Wii U out of faith. I bought the Wii U out of the Nintendo Direct that they unveiled Splatoon. Not because I necessarily wanted to play Splatoon, but they were the only people that were saying fun in their press conference. Video games are fun. This is a fun game. We want people to experience fun. Everyone else is cinematic experience, a mature experience, death, carnage.
Yeah.
We're pushing these polygons and these teraflops and all this bullshit. Once upon a time, I cared about all that tech stuff. Now I don't have to, because games have come to a point where design is paramount. Because I had more fun playing Shovel Knight, and I know Shovel Knight you could play on Nintendo platforms, but I had more fun playing Shovel Knight on the PS Vita than really I had playing anything on the Wii U. And the sad part about the Wii U is the first game I played on it was Super Mario Galaxy 2. Because I really couldn't care about the majority of stuff that was on it, and I just wanted to play a game that I never got around to. Now, had this been the controller, Bayonetta 2 would have been played, and it's so funny. I'm drawing a blank on even what are the great exclusives this generation for Nintendo, but I would have been more interested because I would have been more connected. But holding something like this that I pretty much had to have plugged in all the time because his battery life was abysmal. I didn't need anything on the screen. Zombie U was a worse experience because of the gamepad, and a game like that you think would be tailored towards it because of the map and the sonar detection and all. But it was just annoying, and I found that if I was playing a game like Super Mario 3D World, that I would sooner just, if I'm going to look down for any reason, I would sooner just play it with this and just turn my TV off. And that kind of takes away from the concept of having like a home console. Now I can appreciate that moving forward if they go in the way where there's some kind of pairing between like a future 3DS and the system. That's fine. But you know what? Wii was great for fucking Wii Sports and very, very little else.
Can I actually,
other than Super Mario Galaxy.
Actually, can I enter something
Sure.
to highlight your point or to cut you off? Here's the problem with the Wii I actually had. The Wii was, and this is a kind of unlike Nintendo, they had short-term thinking involved.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the main problem. Because they were targeting the casual audience, which is awesome, because it's an audience that never got, as Terence covered, with phones, helped bring them into the fold. So Nintendo saw this thing, okay, the phones are bringing the people, let's bring everyone into the casual market. What's the main problem with the casual people, though?
They're casual. They're fickle. And they
2
put
games
things
a
away.
year. Christmas
Yeah.
and birthday, and
Yeah.
that's it. They're not like us.
They're not like we go out and buy stupid amounts of video games,
Yeah.
and that's what we're all about. But
I was left wanting with the Wii. And I'm like, you know what? It was fun. I'm really happy. It was extremely successful for them. I'm happy to see Nintendo make money. By no stretch of the imagination did it harken to my favorite era of Nintendo, which is not Super Nintendo, which is an NES, which was the GameCube. Because it was the first and only time I felt Nintendo understood me as a gamer in that point in time, and they represented a portion of their games to something that I would be interested. I love colorful games. I love challenging platforms. I have no problems with things that are all age friendly. But you need a diversity to justify owning a system. And it came to a point with the Wii U, I'm looking at it going, okay, I've played what I've wanted to play. I'm not really interested in playing these other supposedly, well, obviously like widely regarded great games, because I had too much that I wanted to play. And I had, once upon a time, having every console was essential if you had the means to do it, and if you like wanted to play the best, because you didn't care about having you didn't care about being this fanboy or that fanboy. Oh, hey, what game's coming out? Okay, what system's that for? Or what system does it run best on? Cool, and then that's it.
Yeah.
But with this generation, I found out the Wii U was, I ended up playing 3-4 games on it, and I just couldn't care about it. And same thing, the different topic, but same thing with Microsoft's most recent offering, the Xbox One. I just had it there, I'm just like, you know what? I don't care. The days of having all consoles are dead, because in terms of exclusives, they're so few and far between. And unfortunately, with the Wii U, I didn't want to go out and spend more money just so I can enjoy games. It's like, you know what? I bought the console. I should have the means to play. For me, this is the best peripheral Nintendo has ever released, and it's one that I'll never buy because it just ultimately wasn't worth the price of admission, considering I already bought the system. And I don't want to tell Nintendo that they're right making these mistakes. You have companies like Capcom and Konami, like Japanese companies that are very out of touch with the global market. Nintendo isn't much better than them, but it scares me because they're the ones having consoles. And they're the ones that are the recognizable name. They're the ones that people will still, especially older generations, will still associate video games with. Hell, in the 80s, people didn't call video games. They call them the Nintendo. Hey, you playing that Nintendo, boy? So, like, moving forward, Nintendo needs to prove that they deserve my business. No longer can I be okay with myself blindly giving money in the hopes that things are going to be good. Because you know what? NX comes out. It's a phenomenal system. We'll figure that one out 2-3 years into its life cycle. And if that's the case, that's when the system's going to be cheaper. That's when any hardware revisions are going to be made. And that's when it's going to have a library where it's actually worth getting. In terms of being a blind day one adopter, I love you guys. I do not see it anymore. That is, and I get it. We've all been in the lines. We've all been, like the PS3 line. I was in a line for 2 days for, right? But those days are gone, because in terms of what is delivered, day one isn't worth it. And the money that is put for it, you know what? I'd rather put it to somewhere else or just keep it in the bank until a company proves that it's worth buying. And nostalgia is no longer reason enough. Having an allegiance to a corporation is mind-boggling. I ain't gonna hate on anybody that does it, but you're not gonna see me do it. If Sony, like PS4 is the only current gen system I have, right? When the next generation systems come around, or whatever Microsoft is trying to do, the only one that's going to get my money is the one that seems to be the best purchase, that's going to give me the most bang for my buck, that I'm going to enjoy and I'm not going to regret. I regret buying the Wii U, and I regret buying the Xbox One.
I agree with a lot with what you're saying. But I got to play the HTC Vive, and I was really not expecting a groundbreaking experience from that. I wasn't expecting anything special. And then I found something that I wasn't expecting. A new kind of way to think of old designs for games. I played this game called Budget Cuts that, seriously, if that was just a regular first-person shooter, it really wouldn't have been anything special. It would have been just a very basic indie game that everybody's seen before. But the way they implemented it with in-room or full-room VR, it really changes the way I see VR now. It's like a completely different experience. The Wii U, I was expecting the exact same thing. And I think that's why... Even though I love the Wii U games, I think that's why I didn't enjoy the controller, because none of the developers knew how to utilize that controller to some futuristic ability that would have made everything better. Like, Nintendo Land was a great example of how they utilized the controller for party games, and how they used the controller for a bunch of things that you couldn't do with any other game that was being developed at the time. You could find other solutions, but were they as fun as to use this one? Like, there was that one game, it's like a Luigi's Mansion game where you're going around and you can see stuff on your screen the other people can't. That was a smart move. The thing is, people had to be in the room with you to make sense of that. And a lot of people would go, well, how do you do that outside of the room? Well, multiplayer online. One person sees something that everyone else doesn't, right? That's how you do that.
Yeah.
So what Nintendo was trying to do was they were trying to make a home console multiplayer experience where one person was seeing a different menu, or a different screen. And then they also did stuff which kind of irritated me with basically telling everybody, now you don't need a TV to play your console. But dude, I'm at home. I've got a TV. If I'm buying a video game console, what are the chances are that I don't own a TV?
Yeah.
They were really hammering that in. And I remember a lot of people were telling me, oh, that's the reason I'm buying it. You know, I've got like 5 kids at home and I just want to play my console. It's like, buddy, you got 5 kids at home. They're going to be playing the video game console. I don't know what magic world you live in.
Where's your money coming from?
Like,
seriously.
Afford video games.
I can attest to that. My buddy Joe, who has a son who loves his playing his Wii U, and they haven't implemented the TV to play on the screen once. Because when his son wants to play, he's taking over the TV no matter what.
and honestly, like, and the games that would be designed for the console realistically should be using both screens in order to make use of that whole design. See, here is my biggest core problem with the Wii U. A lot of people talked to me, and they were really upset about that original video I made, because when I discussed it, I said, this isn't the 3DS. This isn't the DS. And they said, it's the same thing. There's 2 screens. Look, on the DS, the screens are like that far apart.
Oh,
when you're playing...
Well, maybe they're just going up to the TV and going...
Oh, yeah, my God, right? When you're playing a console, when you're involved in the experience of looking at a big TV, even if you're looking at a small TV like this sucker here, you're focused on that one TV. The moment you have to pull yourself away from that experience, you get lost. Now look, I don't care how small that TV is, okay? You can still play games that pull you into the experience where the TV disappears and the controller disappears and you are one with the game. That does happen. You get that experience from listening to good music or watching good movies or reading a good book. That does happen. And video games can provide you that exact same expression, that exact same loss of feeling. And I think that the Wii U, instinctively how it's designed, can never make you feel that way, because you constantly have to be aware that you're holding that controller. With the room scale VR that HTC Vive has, you're there, man. Like, you're in that world. You feel like you're a part of that world.
You know what it does? The HTC Vive gives something that all these game companies have promised, but no one's delivered.
Yeah.
Something new. We've been, if you want to think about it, there hasn't been like a really big innovation in video games since the 32-bit era. So when we started dealing with what we referred to then as 3D gaming, that was kind of it. Everything from there has just been revisionist. You know, like more polygons, more CPU power, more RAM. We can do more. But with the Vive, it's that thing. It's that thing where, you know, like everyone says, as you get older, time passes quicker. And the reason it is because you're experiencing less new things. The HTC Vive room scale was a new thing. And it sat with me now for going on a month. And I constantly think about it. And that's what I want. That's what I want the future to be for my involvement in video games. Yeah, I want to play a card game on my phone. Or yeah, I want to play a cool like portable game on my Vita, right? Or my 3DS. But in terms of thinking about video games and thinking about the future, like, you know what? I don't really give a shit about Scorpion. I really give a shit about Scorpio, whatever. But see, that's the thing. I care so little about it. The Microsoft's E3 presser literally, they forced me to take away my business that I was giving to them, because I'm like, yeah, I can't. You guys are fucked. But what Nintendo would need to do to make an awesome next generation console and make an actual next generation console, which we have not seen since 1995, You know what? Honestly, I can see what they were doing. The Wii U, the problem with the pad is it was hyped so much it could never live up to expectation. The NX is going to be, I don't care what it's going to be because I know what it's not going to be. It's not going to be a VR system. And since it's not going to be a VR system, I don't care about doing this. How many more generations do I have to do this? I don't care. I put on the HTC Vive and it didn't matter what I was fucking playing because everything was a new experience and I enjoyed everything. Even the little painting demo. You know what? I was sad when the demo ended and it switched to another thing because it's like, yo, I could have done more. Like, oh, there's so much more I wanted to do. And every demo that I played, when it ended, it was like, and I don't feel that. I don't feel that as much from video games, like traditional video games. And I think, especially as the home changes, the home in terms of having a telephone and a desktop computer and like an entertainment area where you would have your TV and hopefully a decent like stereo or whatnot. Those days are kind of going because the younger generations, they've been raised with a phone in their hands, so they're kind of like a desktop computer. And I know I'm not speaking for everyone, but in terms of the masses, the millennials, what the fuck's a desktop computer? What the fuck's a laptop? What the fuck's a tablet? I got this fucking phone in my hand that I literally can do everything in. So why would I want to fucking give away the real estate to sit down and to have a TV and to have a dedicated couch and all of this just to sit and fucking do something that people have been doing for 30 years?
But isn't that a problem with the HTC Vive right now, where you have to have that big-ass desktop and you have to have that big-ass space? Because, buddy, you don't want to play that in a small room. Look, the space we're in now, this isn't like the smallest space. I can keep my hands out to left and right, and I can't touch the walls. I'm also pretty short. But, like, for realistic senses here, when I was in this room, I smacked the wall once or twice when I was playing VR room scale in here. You know, like, I hit a couple things. And simply because there's just... You need that much space.
That could be the reason. That could be the reason why ultimately something like room scale may not be successful. Is because you need to allocate space, and the world is moving in a direction where private space is less of a commodity, and a whole kind of sharing mentality is more of a commodity. So people like us, like what we've come from, we've been there since Atari. We've seen every generation. Something like room scale VR is exponentially futuristic for us. Hell, I said holodeck 20 times that day.
Actually, I had the holodeck like room set up, so when you go to pull out of a game, it just shows you in the holodeck, and I was like, okay, this is cool. And I just assumed that was my... Like, I would love it to just replicate the room I was actually in. I thought that would have looked really cool, but just having it be the holodeck was just like, yeah, that's...
See, I understand. Cool. See, I'm the one... unfortunate experience here who hasn't played VR, the new VR yet. I said my last experience.
It's just like Virtual Boy.
VR was like
exactly like Virtual Boy.
Yeah. But there's something like you're saying like with millennials with their phones and missing experience, and that's where maybe I'm going to sound like the grumpy old man here. But to me, now I haven't experienced HTC Vive, and believe me, I want to experience it. But for me, now I invested. I know not everyone can do this, but a fair amount of money into a nice home theater. And there's nothing better than sitting in front of my giant TV with my giant sound system and my controller and playing something like, listen, I love indie games too, but playing like Rise of the Tomb Raider, for example, on that TV with those speakers cranked is an experience that you can't replicate on a small little device. It's just impossible.
Yeah, so there's no argument that. The thing is though is if we're going to talk about the AAA market, the issue with them is how long can the AAA market even stay afloat, because games that sell 6 million copies are considered failures because of the budgets that they put out, and we all know you do not need $60 million to make a good video game. If you want to make bombastic spectacle, cool, make it an actual good game. But if it's just going to be a tired reiteration, an annualization of a tired franchise, insert whatever you don't like there. That's no innovation. Nothing's moving forward, and you're kind of seeing for a decade, Call of Duty was kingpin, and look what happened at E3 this year. It's because people are getting
bored, man.
Getting sick of it, and that's
seeing the same thing over and over again. That's what it is.
And we all know video game executives are fucking morons, because like they do not understand. The thing is we have a better sense of what's going on in terms of what people like, but we also have the intelligence to agree that there's no way that we can account for every taste and every demographic that plays video games. But to pigeonhole to essentially teenage boys Be like, oh, what looks good, what looks bad. And they've been fed this when they're growing up, so they're more susceptible and they're more kind of loyal to things that they've grown up with. You think about the games that you liked when you were 15 years old. They were basically wet dream versions of the games that you played when you were a kid. So obviously you would be on that. But as you grow and as your interests change, you want more. You want different experiences. You don't go and watch action movies all the time. You don't go and read romance novels all the time. You want, like, it's a medium, and the medium needs to be infinite. I think VR could be I think VR may have a bigger impact in the world outside of video games than it does inside, because the applications are just literally limitless of what you can do. But again, going back to what's the norm? Why are so many people considered gamers now that they don't even use the term gamers? Because pretty much everyone's gamers, because everyone has a smartphone. So everyone can play fucking Candy Crush and Flappy Bird and Solitaire and then and whatever.
Solitaire's the big one, right? Everyone's playing Solitaire on their mobile phone.
You think Call of Duty's big?
Yeah.
Pokemon Go is
there should be Solitaire in
Pokemon Go. Like everyone's just playing that right now, and that's pretty much it.
And that's awesome. That's like and that's great. And it's like, okay, and then if that proves to be successful, then we're going to see 1,000 clones of it. So it's like every time it looks like the video game industry is like, wow, maybe they're doing something right. Like, I'm not the hugest fan of first-person shooters, but holy shit, my attention was piqued when I saw Battlefield 1. It's like, you know what? Even though EA, again, proving they're fucking idiots, they're like, oh, we initially didn't want to do this because the kids don't know what World War I is. Okay, for starters, the internet. Secondly, history class. Thirdly, fuck you. Like, seriously, fuck you. Fourthly, I'm sorry. I thought these games were rated M, which meant that the price of admittance was 17 years and up. Yeah. And you're talking about marketing to children. No one pays attention to that. I find that very disturbing. But the best games, the best minds, I believe this. It come from independent developers, because they're not fucking thinking about pleasing shareholders. They're thinking about, hey, I love fucking video games. I love making video games. I want to do something special. Games need to be made because there's an area for that game to exist. We don't need 336 Call of Duty clones through various iterations of sequels and whatnot. Like, even if you really love that game, like that's a style of game, like you'll never be able to play everything, and it's going to prevent you from enjoying anything else.
That's the problem I've had with a lot of, I hate to say a lot of gamers, but yeah, I like, and you've ever seen my collection, I don't focus on one particular, like obviously I have preferences, of course I really love Resident Evil, but I'm playing Overwatch, I'm playing Shovel Knight, I'm going back to my Super Nintendo and still playing Star Fox and Super Metroid, you know what I mean? I can still go back to all that stuff, but my concern is, you mentioned Battlefield 1, now, E3 got a huge ovation and will probably sell a hell of a lot better than Call of Duty Infinite. But will that now just spark the next wave of now World War I shooters? Because remember, World War II shooters were huge. Then Modern Warfare came out. Then it was all modern. Now, of course, they've gone stale. Now it'll be World War I now for a while. So maybe now is Call of Duty, the next Call of Duty, or the 2017 Call of Duty.
The thing is, what I saw with the World War II shooters and with the Modern Warfare shooters is they're getting way too complex, because basically they're like, people are getting bored of Modern Warfare, we've got to go to the future. And it's like, okay, I get what you're doing, but when you go to the future, you're just making crap up. You're making things up that have no real narrative to actual warfare and battle right now. So you can say anything. Mechs. Invisibility cloaks, whatever, you can do anything, and you're not limiting yourself. Basically, they start thinking in these really bizarre ways that don't have a really good hold on modern tech. Like, okay, futuristic guns, you should never have to reload. They should just keep firing forever. You know what I mean? Like, that's the idea. They want to make them better and better. That's eventually what they would get to. And then with World War I, well, technically, you shouldn't have too many multi-shot rifles in World War I. You know what I mean?
Machine guns were basically nests and a few elite soldiers.
So
everyone else had single-shot, rifles.
But I think with World War I games, by limiting the kind of design that they do in a World War I shooter, they can figure out a way for that stuff to work, and it would just be a lot better, like a stricter kind of gameplay mechanic.
Innovation through limitation.
Yes, and then you would find people having a lot of fun playing it because they have this limited view of how stuff would work. Oh, we don't have radar. Oh, we don't have this. If I start the game up and there's radar, I swear to God, that better not be in it. Radar better not be in a World War I game.
And no rockets from your biplanes.
Yeah, right. Like what I remember seeing, they were playing this like really heavy pumping what's it called?
I think it was White Stripes, right?
White Stripes. It's like a dubstep version of White Stripes. And then you're seeing these biplanes going, and it's like, biplane battles that intense? Are you stoned? Like, that's not how that looked in World War One.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember World War One? Piss in a rag and huff it, so you didn't
right.
die
So
from
mustard gas.
Yep. Like, press F to huff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, is that seriously what's going to happen?
I
Is
hope
that what
so.
this is?
I would rather have that than being able to pull up a HUD that has like a radar and your exact location on your map and all that shit. It's like, oh fuck, the mustard gas is going. Oh god, but I'm not
It's
dying
horrific.
though.
The World War, like, honest to God, when the World War II shooters first started coming out, they were trying to be a sort of like documentary. Kids, this is what World War II was like. It was bad. It was horrible. I remember playing one of those very early World War II, like Medal of Honor or the original Call of Duty.
Yeah.
When you saw those, they weren't treating it like it was this pumping bass soundtrack of awesomeness. It was like, look, this was a bad time. Here's the historical events. This is what it was like for a soldier. This is for you to understand what it was like to be a soldier without having to be one. That's what those games were about.
I actually remember the Medal of Honor Frontlines, like the opening scene, the storming the beaches, and that was like, you're
Normandy,
right.
yeah.
It wasn't. It was like obviously a high intense action and meant to be like a video game, but yeah, it wasn't. There's no dubstep.
One tiny wrong move and you were dead. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
War is a horrible thing. And the instant that Call of Duty, which we had a problem with because Call of Duty would always be released around Remembrance Day, which is signified. It's a holiday that we celebrate in Canada, and it has to do with, it was kind of like the war and the end of World War One. Because war's fucking terrible. But so I always felt weird having Call of Duty games being released in November. I understand how the fucking financial calendar works, but I always found it tasteless. And then over the successive iterations of this franchise, it became to more and glorify war, more and more, making it look like it was so fucking cool and so fun and so badass. And all these fucking people that play Call of Duty multiplayer, they think they're all fucking great and they're shit talking each other and trolling and all that. It's like, you know what, man? See, the reality is like war is fucking terrible, and anybody that has somehow may have gotten an idea, be like, oh, I can do this in real life. The results are always the same. There's no such thing as someone getting away with it. War is not cool, and going out and fucking shooting people on a rampage has dire consequences that, you know what? I never really feel the weight and the gravity of that in video games. You know, it's just like, yeah, it's just fucking, everything's a kill simulator. And you know what? You're going to glorify war like that. You know, that's why the world we live in today is the world that we live in today. I'm sorry, that was way too deep.
I'll say, did we start talking about the Wii U?
Yeah.
But again, but the Wii U is that insignificant. You know, like it's just it's another misfire in Nintendo's hit or miss history. We think Nintendo because we think the NES, we think Super Nintendo. You know, the dreams of what N64 were going to be.
Well, though, I think even though we all agree that the Wii U was a failure, and the numbers don't lie, like I said, 1 + 1 is always equals 2.
We're like, just, you know, we're not hitting the Wii U because we actively hate the Wii U. We're not hitting the Wii U because we think it's like a terrible
controller.
system.
I wish it would have been great if I had this.
But we don't hate Nintendo, right? No. It's not that. We come from a spot where we really like Nintendo. We'd like to see them be more successful, but really, what we've seen happen these past little couple of years have not really been inspiring. I mean, look, the HTC Vive did something special, and it did something I don't think anyone identified. Remember when Nintendo used to make the Game Boy and the NES? And they used to make cheaper versions of hardware that had simple ideas, but they made grand gameplay experiences, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, at the beginning of this, I was talking about Budget Cuts, that game on HTC Vive. Budget Cuts couldn't have been made by a group of like 100 people. It had to be made by a group of 10. It was such a simple concept that would have been nothing on a regular just indie game would have come on. If this was an indie game that just came out, nobody would have played it, nobody would have talked about it, it would have been basic, would have been thrown under the bus. But because it involved a VR world, this basic, simple concept was so engrossing and so fun to play in VR. And I think because of that, I'm thinking people can make simple games again that VR makes challenging and makes it fun. Mm-hmm. It makes it something different. Mm-hmm. Look, if I were to play a game where I was like shooting bows and arrows at people, that would have been anything. But in HTC Vive's Valve's VR Labs or whatever it's called, there's a bow and arrow game that was so like using a real bow and arrow that I was playing, because I used to do an actual archery in high school. I was actually doing archery just like I used to do in school. I'm thinking, this is insane. This is exactly what I remember it being like. And this is such a simple asset. It couldn't have taken long to produce, but there it is. It works amazingly well. I'm thinking that VR is getting to that same sweet spot that Nintendo was in the 90s, and we're seeing Nintendo not wanting to go to that direction. Look, I know it's a joke. Oh, Nintendo shouldn't get into VR because of the Virtual Boy. You know what? No, Nintendo should get into VR.
Despite the Virtual Boy.
Look, we're seeing Valve do it good right now, okay? We're seeing Oculus try their hand. We're seeing Nintendo or Sony go at it. No, if Nintendo did VR, then they would do something special. Nintendo has been working at VR longer than any of these companies.
And that's what I wanted to bring in, that the fact that even though we're saying the Wii U is a financial failure and all that, but there's one thing we always have to give Nintendo credit for. They are innovative. Like, they are pushing when other companies are now want to stay back and do the same, and it has worked. Like, look at the PS4 and Xbox One are technically just, obviously, they're more powerful versions of their previous console, and it's worked, you know, especially for the PlayStation 4, which has sold a hell of a lot of units. But Nintendo has tried, okay, let's try this different. And when you try several things different, of course they're not all going to work.
Not everything's going to stick.
No, like if you don't make mistakes, then you're definitely not trying hard enough. That's what it comes down to. You've got to, like, you're going to have a few failures.
But they need to have a trajectory, though. See, the thing is Nintendo reminds me of someone that just got out of university. You know, throughout school they were great marks in grade school, great marks in high school, involved in a lot of, like, you know, like, things for the school, for the community, and then when they got to university, they fucking knocked it out of the park. But getting to university, they realized there was a lot more fish in the pond, and they were no longer that singular fucking shining star. So when they graduated university, which is kind of the part where Nintendo's been at since, if you think about it, the 90s, everything that they've done since has not built really upon itself. Nintendo, first and foremost, is a software company. I love the innovations they make, and, you know, they continue to push, but I believe if they just built on their innovation software-wise, they make much more money, and B, make their stockholders, their shareholders, much happier, and all of us much happier, because there would be a trajectory with them. They're the person that got out of university. They went to a job because they want professional experience to get the better jobs, but they get sick of it at a certain point and they pull out. But they don't have enough professional experience to get that higher level job. So what do? It's like they regroup. So, okay, what are we going to do now? They try this. And it's the same thing, because it feels like they're always starting from square one every generation. They're not building on top of it. They're always starting from the beginning. They never really build on anything. It's just like something works to a degree, and then they never try to, like, build. Like, even with the Wii U, the only thing they really did is use the controllers and use the logo and use Wii, which confused people, which is another bad decision. But it's like, they're not building towards something great. It's just kind of like they're happy at their level.
They change the platform every time. Like, okay, like...
Can I interject why they did that? Because
Yeah.
it comes directly from Nintendo's mouth why they did that. Because obviously the Super Nintendo was an advanced version of Nintendo. Like, that was, like you said, building on something. And in instance for arguably, even though they unfortunately stuck with cartridges and that cost them, well, that's a discussion.
It was like the FX chip was like going, 3D. Okay, let's do that with the N64.
But then with the GameCube was arguably, it was very similar to the PlayStation 2 and Xbox. Like, that generation, they're all very, very similar. One was a bit more powerful than the other, but other than that, they're all much the same. What happened in that generation? GameCube only sells 20 million units. At the time, other than the Virtual Boy, it was their worst selling console by far. So Nintendo panicked, and they said flat out, they saw themselves doing what everyone else was doing and realized that's not the way they should be going. So you're right, they did start over again and again and again, but that's kind of their motif, because they did try to continue on with everyone else and build upon something, and they fell flat on their ass.
We could have been at the crest of a third generation of Nintendo consoles that built off on what they learned from the GameCube, because we would have had the Wii.
Yeah.
We would have had what should have been the Wii's successor, which I feel the Wii U was terrible at that regard. And then whatever that better version of that console would have been, there would have been something to build on top of it. That could have, you know what, exactly. Why bother competing directly with Microsoft and Sony? Let's do our own thing, but let's have a trajectory. And I'm not seeing the trajectory. And it's for someone, you know what, a lot of kids don't have the resources, but they have the time to play games. We have the resources to play games, but we don't have the time to play all we want to. And it sucks, because you have to get selective when you want to play. So it's like, Nintendo, man, come back to me. Come back to me when you've I hate to say this, but when you've gotten to the next level.
Yeah, very Sega. But it's like I think one of my biggest problems with Nintendo right now is by the time the PlayStation 2 was introduced, everybody, and I mean everybody, was like, oh, backwards compatibility is actually pretty important. Now, we've had backwards compatible consoles in the past with the Atari generation and stuff like that. Like, many people tend to forget that, but we did have consoles back then that were newer, that could run older games. And then around the time the NES came onto the market, everybody kind of threw that methodology away, and they're like, well, we really don't need to do that. Sega kept doing it for a while with the Sega Genesis and the
Power-based converter.
The power-based converter, so you could play old Master System games on Sega Genesis. And you know what? That stuff was cool. And for some reason, Nintendo, despite this amazing library they had, it was only with the Wii that they really started to resell digital assets of older video games onto the Wii platform. But I think that was a mistake. I think by the time we got to that point, they simply didn't understand what. And I mean, like, look, guys, seriously, if you're going to be playing Wii like controls with old NES games, doesn't work. The Wii controller is not as good to play NES games. I know it's just a Nintendo NES controller just to spit to the side, but it doesn't hold the same way. No. It doesn't feel the same way. It's not the same experience.
It's not meant to be held like that. It's a secondary function to try to get more adopters to play it and more people to be good at it.
Exactly.
The Wii, it was designed like this.
It was yes, exactly. And what I feel like Nintendo, around the time the GameCube came out of the market, they should have really been fun. I mean, obviously you can't get the cartridges to work on the newer systems the same way. It would have been very different. But I feel like we should have gotten to a point where Nintendo was capable of going, okay, look, when we got to the Wii, we could play GameCube games backwards, right? Any GameCube game you had, you could play on the Wii. This was a great idea because no one really bought the Wii, the GameCube comparatively. There's a lot of people that bought the Wii, but not a lot of people bought the GameCube, so they could play their old GameCube games on the Wii.
Yeah.
But then the later versions of the Wii removed the GameCube compatibility. Yep. And then the Wii U came out, and the Wii U is able to run Wii games, but it wasn't able to run GameCube games. It's like they kept skipping things here and there, and but I don't care how much it costs.
But that's the thing, and that's the problem with the industry, is because video games will never be an art form. And the reason why it'll never be an art form is because the biggest players refuse to treat it like that. It's a fucking business.
You're seeing a video game as an art form from the indie crowd right now. They're treating it like that.
Oh no, they're fantastic. Without the indie crowd, I would not be playing current video games.
Can I say here because I love indie games. But can we correct that? Say the select indie.
Very select.
I think, and I don't mean to bash indie gamers but we have to keep in mind, I know indie gamers are the darlings of the industry right now, but it's the select few that are making these great games, like Shovel Knight, like Aeon's Works, because there are as many shit indie games as there are shit AAA games. It's just that the shit AAA games get obviously tons of coverage, and we get to make fun of them more because this game cost $100 million, where an indie game did not. But make no mistake, there are a pile of garbage.
Turn on Steam Greenlight. You'll see a bunch.
But you're right. But the ones that shining through, like Limbo and the stuff like that, are just like they're miracles because they're freaking brilliant.
But for me, this is where I really identify. Like I can't identify with Nintendo from a business practice anymore. Like I get it. It costs a lot of money to include all those little components in there. But like, dude, we are emulating stuff now. Why are we not... Like, Nintendo treats their NES and Super Nintendo and Nintendo 64 back catalog like it's trash. They don't go back and re-release these games in an easy-to-download format. Look, guys, we've got MP3s out there right now that are 99 cents a pop, okay? 99 cents a pop, and some of those MP3s are bigger than NES games, digitally. The file size of them are minuscule. The fact that I can't just go into the Wii shop and just get a whole bunch of 99-cent games is insane. Mm-hmm. Why can't I do that? Why can't I just have these older games that I already know as cheap as it can possibly be? And I hate when people say, well, NES games take a lot of time to play, so they're worth that money. What about all the movies we have that are sold in huge packages on DVD and Blu-ray for dirt cheap? Look at Netflix. How much does that cost a month? And we can stream everything now.
It's a sliding scale in that regard, because it's like, yes, when you buy a game when it comes out, you're going to pay full retail, but when you buy that game a year and that full retail no longer exists, and it's going to be at this price point. And then it's going to basically, the price is going to dwindle until the physical copies are gone. This is how that one works.
Yeah.
So I don't understand. It's like, you know what? Quite frankly, hey, Nintendo, cool. In 1987, yes, I would pay your full asking price for a video game. But if you think that I'm going to pay $7, $8, $10 for a fucking game that came out 30 years ago, that is, I hate to say it, but extremely quaint, compared to what we've experienced in contemporary gaming. Don't overvalue your product.
Like, we've got Earthbound on the Wii U, which is one of the most expensive Super Nintendo games they released on the Wii U. And all throughout the years, Nintendo kept saying, yo, Earthbound's not important. Earthbound's not important. Well, hey, bucko, if Earthbound wasn't important, why'd you release it for so much money on the fucking Wii shop? You know what I mean? Because they knew. They knew the entire time.
How much was it?
It was most Super Nintendo games, I believe, are $7.99 or anyway. The Earthbound one was $2 or $3 more, and there was no reason for it because obviously it's part of the catalog. They own the rights to it.
But that entire thing irritated the shit out of me because it's like, why did this happen? Look, okay. With Netflix, and I want everyone to understand this, right? With Netflix, the film industry went from celluloid to digital to taking the old celluloid movies and copying them over to a digital format, encoding them, and creating a streaming technology so we could actually get it at home and sell it to us for a couple dollars a month so we could stream the entire library without having to pay for too much every single month. How in the fuck did the film industry and television industry get to that point, and video games have been digital this entire time, and nobody did that?
Ignorance.
How the hell? Yeah. We had Sega TV. Mm-hmm. We had all these digital technologies.
Even in television did it back
in television totally did do it.
Yeah.
We had everyone doing this, look, I'm not blaming Sony because Sony didn't know, like, they weren't always a part of the game industry. I'm not even blaming Microsoft, even though because Microsoft could have done whatever. I'm literally blaming Nintendo for this. Nintendo should have been doing this. Nintendo should not be in the position they're in right now with the Wii U because the Wii U should be the Netflix of video games. Yeah. The system should literally be streaming every goddamn game for $6 a month. What the hell is wrong with Nintendo? This is insane. They own some of the greatest video game franchises of all time, and we're not seeing anything like this from them. No. We're seeing this from Sony.
A 30-plus year library of iconic titles. Generation after generation of amazing Nintendo titles.
It's insane, man.
And Nintendo is just like, oh, the internet? Oh, we don't know about that.
I remember a famous quote from when the GameCube came out, and it just blows my mind to this day. Like, I still remember to this day, when they asked about the online capabilities of the GameCube. And Nintendo's response was, what you have to understand is, I'm sure there's a lot of people playing online games right now, and I'm sure they enjoy it. But what we have to know is that this is just a fad. This isn't going to last forever.
Yes, yeah.
And that was a quote. I'm paraphrasing, but I'm sure you look it up online. I've almost got it word for word what they said back in the early 2000s.
And you know what about Nintendo? I'm pretty sure not everything lasts forever.
Yeah. That's a good time to.
I think that's pretty much it.
Right.
Yeah.